progressively through those lakes, and boats were traveling on a regular basis from the granaries of Egypt to Roman ports all over the sea. Rome had begun to build a breadbasket out of the Egyptian granaries and was feeding the world. This was a time of great buildings, public places such as the Colosseum, and colosseums and theaters constructed all over the Roman Empire. Everywhere Rome put down a new legionary force, it would begin to build buildings that reflected Rome itself. And that's why you will find in places as far away as London and places north into Germany, old Roman fortresses that began to reflect the Roman Empire with theaters and baths. In fact, in London, on the far west side of the Isle of England there, British Isle of England itself, there's the town of Bath, an old Roman fortress with hot running water that was coming out of subterranean systems, heated systems. A marvel in that day. And as the pagans that they were displacing began to look upon what Rome brought with them, they wanted a piece of the pie. They wanted some of this luxury for themselves. So Rome had brought peace. Rome had brought communication. Rome had brought prosperity and commerce to the world. And then there were the Jews. Moving on to the next slide. What did the Jews get? Well, the Jews had been displaced. By 70 AD, shortly after the beginning of the Christian church, the rebellion against Rome had been brought to an end. The Romans ruthlessly squelched the rebellion in Jerusalem, and then within 50 years had cleared out all the rebellious Jews, finally at Masada in 136. The Jews then were dispersed across the Roman Empire in what it became known as the diaspora. The dispersion of the Jews meant that where the Jews went, so went their religion. Because far back as 500 BC, the Jews had begun to develop a system of synagogue, the development of a minyan, of 10 reverent, observant Jews. Jewish males would meet together and they would start a teaching school, what we would call today a synagogue. And there they would begin to study Torah and begin to disperse their ideas as people interested in the teachings of the Jews would come in and sit under the teaching of the Torah. This teaching led to people who would be proselyted into the Jewish religion and also bring about a body of people that did not want to convert to Judaism, but wanted to understand its teachings. And this body of people became known as the God-fearing or God-fearers. In fact, the God-fearers became the focal point of Paul's missionary journeys. And when he went into a synagogue, his message was focused on these that had not converted. As he began to get all kinds of previous conflict from converted Jews, he figured he could work with these Gentiles. And that's how the church began to start. And then there was the Septuagint. The Septuagint had been written in 250 BC. It was the Greek version of the Old Testament, translated from the Old Testament into Greek, from Hebrew to Greek. It got its name because 70 scholars had gone together and worked on it, and when they finished, they came out and it appeared that what they had produced was identical in all 70 copies, thus the name the 70, or the Septuagint. This became the passages that were referred to in the earliest days of the church, before there was ever any kind of gospel, any kind of letter that was being circulated. It wasn't until 397 that we actually had a Christian canon that was formally adopted by the church. And the earliest canon prior to that was actually by a heretic by the name of Marcion, who collected together a few of the books that were circulating around, a few of the Gospels, in 150. And so the earliest book of the Christian church was that of the Old Testament Septuagint. And so with this idea of ethical teaching and strict monotheism, the Jews began to disperse their teaching. As they were dispersed throughout the Roman Empire, their influences were spread, and as their influence was spread, the early Christian churches began to develop in these synagogues at the ends of the empire. So all three of these ingredients go together to create an atmosphere for the beginning of the church, so that Galatians 4:4 could actually be fulfilled. In the fullness of time, God brought forth His Son, born of a woman. And so these three ingredients played a role in the development of the early church. Questions? Well, if not, let's take our break, and we'll make another transition here. So let's take a 10-minute break. It's about 20 after. Let's meet again at 8:30.